wants to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. I guess he can spend $1 trillion and try to take away our $1 billion. But here's the reality. It's already appropriated, already approved by Congress. Even if an elected president in transition wanted to go after a particularly funded, appropriated project in one region, it would take them a long time to do. I actually was just mentioning to one of my colleagues, I just came from a great meeting this afternoon from the new program director of the Green Line Extension. Green Line Extension is going to happen. There's an important vote, the Board of Aldermen next week. They need to vote on $50 million here locally. We have to pay up to fill that gap. I don't like doing it, but we have to do it in order to happen. If that doesn't happen, there'll be no Green Line. If it happens, we're going to get it. All right, and it will happen. I don't fear the Donald Trumps on that one. I fear any delay in what we do locally. It'll stop it, and then we miss the construction season to go up. So politically, I think we're solid there. We're just going to take our vote. So that's where we're at. Yes, I'll go this side.
I'm Lisa Coyne. I'm a Somerville resident of over 10 years. I just bought a house in Somerville. Exciting. So I wonder, because there's probably a pretty decent-sized immigrant population here that's undocumented, and concrete ways to have that be successful for everyone. So everybody's talking about how horrifying it is that people could be removed. I wonder if there's any way, as you look at the committees, to think of how much we would need to fundraise to get a lot of the undocumented people in Somerville documented or in the process of becoming legalized citizens, so there's not like a threat to their safety as stuff moves forward. Because I don't know too much, but I know a lot of people that are here and they're undocumented. It's a financial issue to be able to either put on a wait list or have the ability to even be a legal citizen. So how can we as a community help safeguard the people that are here and get them on the pathway to citizenship fast, so when and if something like this happens, we have a pathway for the people that are living here in the shadows, so they can come and have like a safety net, or be already in the process of being like legal citizens so they can't be taken away? Or how do we expedite that process, and is there any way we can do that with community fundraising, or just a more like engaged pathway for those people to get information and have those tools and have it expedited with infrastructure in the city? I don't know.
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Majority of most every immigrant knows what they need to do to become a citizen. But for the 11 million undocumented, there's no line to stand in. It doesn't exist. And it's a broken system. And there really is no line. I had this a few years ago. I was on Fox News, and the reporter told me that after I had an interview having this debate over sanctuary city status and undocumented immigrants, I ran into one of the reporters at a different event. She said, they sent me to look for the line when you said there was no line to stand in. There is no line to stand in. I said, no shit. Where do you go? You got to go back. They expect you to go back to where you came from and apply there. And maybe in 10 years, and if you're not killed before then, you might have a chance to come back in. That is the sad reality, and what we need. Donald Trump, he's such a great businessman. Let's use his acumen to fix the immigration problem and have a real path to citizenship. I wish it was as simple as raising money. Get it done tomorrow, right here in Somerville. There's no line standing. There really isn't. Now there are some, maybe if someone's undocumented, there might be some other things they can do if their marital status changes and so, but that ain't going to be the case in the Oklahoma trial. That's different. And then there's a challenge where, again, a child, they were born here, but the parents came over undocumented. They're born in this country, so they're citizens by birthright in this country. I appreciate the question. Yes.
My name's Michael, and my question is about the global refugee crisis. And Donald Trump has been pretty clear that he's not interested in the U.S. pulling our fair weight to make sure that people living in unstable conditions have a home. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that Somerville can do to stand on the forefront of not just making the people that are here safe, but opening our doors.
You hear that question? So I'll summarize. And the question is the global refugee crisis. So in addition we've heard what Donald Trump has said, we're going to screen, bring in the good Muslims and
Extreme
keep
vetting.
out extreme vetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Imagine if there's extreme vetting for the presidency. So, this is just shocking. Think about what's happening in most of the global conflicts. What has been our role in our foreign policy? If we don't want to have a global refugee crisis, let's not destabilize these countries. The Syrian crisis, it's just baffling to me to see those images, and where is our moral backbone here? And yeah, what can we do? Well, our doors are open, and we should hold that. We've been a city of hope for immigrants for generations here. Hold that as a beacon for those seeking sanctuary or some form of civility and safety for their families. We all know they're escaping extreme, violent, horrific conditions. We played a role in that. We played a role in it, and then we shut the doors on these folks. And the refugees who come to this country are vetted more than any other immigrant group. Extreme vetting occurs, and it's so hard to get in here. So I think, I'm glad I was relieved. I wasn't happy when the governor took his stance that, we need to pause. Pause what? We had some city leaders who backed off that comment. I think we can't let the lie become the truth about why people want to come to our country, what they're escaping, and what our role was there. I think, what can we do locally? I think we just need to speak about that, be truthful about it, be ethical about what is occurring, and that, our doors, our community is open. But there's a much larger conversation that has to happen around that. Back over there, I can go outside. Yeah, go ahead.
I've been here for only a few months, but I just want to speak a little bit to something someone else had raised. My husband is Russian, and my family's been here for generations, and it's a really annoying bureaucratic process to be legal and get everything. We're legal, everything's fine, but it's so frustrating and it's so time consuming, and it's really not geared to people who have jobs that are not highly skilled and people that don't have high English ability. So I just want to raise that there is an organization that's functioning in Massachusetts called Justice for Our Neighbors. And what they do is to provide legal assistance to people. So that's one way that you could help immigrants. And certainly I look forward to seeing what the city will put together as a centralized way of doing more. But legal help would be really helpful.
Thank you. And I was just reminding there are great organizations working like MIRA, and that's Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Association, they're doing an incredible amount of work. And also here locally, they were in Somerville now in Chelsea, Central Presente, which was a leading force in driving, and is, in driving the Trust Act conversation as well. How are we doing on time? Are we okay?
Yeah.
Mike.
I'm Mike Runco. I'm chair of the Ward 3 committee, and I stand with you on the issues of trying to make this a safe place for all of our neighbors, especially the ones who are the most vulnerable. But the threat of this new administration goes well beyond the threat to those people. It's a threat to all of us and to our country. The Ward 3 Democratic Committee met on November 20th, included in the meeting.
I'm Eric Doyle. Hey Eric, how you doing? So I'm curious to know what Somerville is doing to keep housing costs down for people who are immigrants, as there's a lot of building and whatnot in the area. And my 4 years here, I've seen property values go up and rent go up, and it's nice to be a sanctuary for people from other places. But if they can't afford to live here, this can't be a sanctuary for them. And I wonder
Thank you, Eric. We agree. We love the growth of the city, the things we hoped and planned for are actually happening, but if we lose our soul along the way, then to what end? Are we doing the things we plan to do? You know, as a city and as a region, we need 435,000 units of housing. If we're gonna level off the market forces for rents, for home purchase. And you're right, you know, those at the bottom end of the socioeconomic scale, they're the ones who are not gonna be able to be here. And what we promote is who we are, that multicultural strength, that diversity, the robustness of our neighborhoods, our squares, the 52 languages we speak. We love that. We don't want to lose that creativity, that originality. So as a city, we have a shared set of hopes and dreams to make sure we can meet that challenge. But I want to preface that by saying there's no way one city's going to do it alone. If we met all our goals to build all the housing units we say we're going to build, which is several thousand more, at least 6, probably 9, we continue to pass important zoning reforms like 20% inclusionary. We continue to expand our housing programs for those who can't afford, even at the middle income range. If we don't, as a region, take a regional approach with other cities and towns, there's no way we're building a firewall that only Somerville is going to be immune from that. And this is the same conversation we're having with all those other mayors in the greater Boston region, and it's having an impact on all of us. And that is one of the greatest crises right before us right now. We agree. So I'll tell you, we're doing a whole bunch of technical things, legislative reform, new programs, but even if we execute every single one of those perfectly, there's no way that the market force is going to raise home prices in Cambridge and Medford and Malden, as you've seen, and continue in Boston, Arlington, and they're not going to touch Somerville. The greatest thing we can do right now in the region is to build that housing stock. And Somerville is meeting that goal. Whereas a city that actually believes in density. Density is good done right, but there are parts of Middlesex County as soon as you leave the city that have less density than North Dallas. But there's as a region, it really has to be a regional approach, and we're having that conversation. We need to have more action, and the state needs to play a more leading role in that. Listen.
Yes, no, it's fine. Thank you. Hi. I just wanted to remind you about.
I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Oh, I have to use Fergal's mic.
Oh, I have to use Virgo. Okay, I'll just be really loud. Oh, no. I don't have to be. Hi, and thank you for calling on me because I actually have to leave and I don't want to be rude. I wanted to remind you about the Count on Me campaign. The Count on Me campaign was a campaign in the 90s which united the city to some extent, and it could be a framework to build a sanctuary city movement on. It's like the ADL No Place for Hate. It's an explicit expression of municipal support for one another, and I just wanted to remind you about it. At the time of the Count on Me campaign, there were banners, people had bumper stickers on their cars, they wore buttons. It was a way of publicly expressing, I think, the values of a sanctuary city. So.
And for those who don't remember, again, during the wave of, we had a lot of immigration, and the latest wave of immigration, especially from Central America in the 80s and 90s, and then from conflicts we played a major role in, we saw we would call human rights crimes, anti-immigrant crimes, hate crimes in the city on a major uptick, and that sparked a lot of civic movement, grassroots movements. Ron mentioned a couple, and just mentioned that one. That's important. That's another one you should keep in mind. In the back, I don't know your name. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Hi, I'm Meredith. Did I just shout? Okay. Hi. I've been here 11 years. I love you, Somerville. I work at UMass Boston. I'm across the river. And part of what I wanted to ask about was going back to what you were saying about this great American complexity. And I think that our teachers and our law enforcement officers and our public servants are sort of, are the first responders in a sense. And so what I'm wondering is, each of us is in some ways vulnerable, and each of us is in some ways able to inflict harm. So how can we as a city help our first interactors, the people who are educating our children, the people who are answering our phones at City Hall, the people who are interacting with us to try to keep our communities safe? How can we train and support one another in the sort of sub-legal realm of interactions to double down on the values that you have been talking about?
Thanks. That's a good question. One of the things we're considering is how do we take a model that we used throughout the 90s, and Melissa was part of that and others, called the Conversations Project, where we had community-based focus group and literally conversations with people about their immigrant experience or their experience on race and so forth. We just did another round of it. We reignited that recently as a result of the city trying to be part of national conversation to understand whether or not institutional racism exists in our public institutions and our agencies and the way we execute programs. We got a lot of public conversation and feedback on some of the things the city can be doing more to reaffirm our values. So that, what you mentioned, it could be a good opportunity there is one idea to expand that conversations, because we're talking about, and we have done it in the schools, to have that conversation, not with first responders, with our teachers, with our students, but the greater community as a whole. And I think conversations are very powerful. You know, I was part of one of the circle focus groups, and when you hear someone's experience, it can be very inspiring and also very humbling. You know, when they express that their experience here is positive, they feel safe, or maybe they're expressing to you or to us that their experience was negative based on their interaction with a certain agency in the city, and they have a different perception than you and I of Somerville, and that's humbling, but it certainly causes a certain level of disequilibrium that causes us to do work. So I think that type of conversation might be a good starting point, and we're going to be looking for ideas from the community. You know, how can we engage in that greater dialogue moving forward? See, how are you?
Hi, first I want to say that thank you very much to all your support. My friends, immigrants, they couldn't come here because, as you know, they are afraid, but they do have many questions. The question that I have for you is that I have seen and I have lived the New Bedford raids, and also I have lived the raid that happened here in Somerville. And based on that, I have seen that I know for experience that when ICE comes, they don't knock any of your doors or they don't call you. They come suddenly, and maybe, I'm not sure, they have the support of the police department. My question is how is the chief police from Somerville here in the city? Does he agree to support you? Is he totally pro-immigrants? Yes, I would like to have his opinion or what he feels or how he's thinking. And at the same time, it's nice to see that there are many faces that are helping and supporting us, but how do we recognize you? Let's say I am an immigrant, I'm scared, I don't have documents, and ICE or whoever is treating me that is going to call immigration. Who do I go? How do I go? Which door do I knock? And that's something that we need to work on it, because I would like us, for me personally or somebody else who is in that position, to be able to go and knock a door or say, hey, you are my ally and I need help, I need your support, how can you help me? And how can we work together to go to that, to make that happen?
Good to see you. Thank you, and thank all your friends for their courage. So those are some questions about what can we do? What do we need to do? How do we prepare? And as I talked about earlier, we're having the conversations with the community, and we're going to expand those conversations about what do we need to do as a community to educate people, to be prepared, to have that, to understand what our rights are, to understand who do we call, and address any concern. As to the police chief, you know, I looking at this meeting tonight, I wish he was here with me because I'd rather he speak for himself, but I'm going to do it. David Fallon was nominated as a champion of change to the White House because I believe, and the community believes, he's a model of progressive leadership and compassionate policing and law enforcement. And what he has done is forth incredible efforts to engage everyone in the population, especially our immigrant population. And when I went to the State House to testify that the Trust Act should be state law, the chief was side by side with me as a law enforcement leader saying this needs to happen, that we will be safer as communities. This promotes a safe, healthy, happy community, that we need everyone's engagement to solve any issues we have in our cities and towns. So he is a champion and a partner with us in this challenge. I promise you that. You brought up a good story, which was a sad one, what happened in New Bedford, a little bit more than 10 years ago, if I remember, one of the raids on that factory, and it was a blind raid, and people were broken apart from families. It was very sad. It really accomplished nothing. Didn't promote any safety in the community, didn't accomplish any economic goal. It just drove a wedge into the valley of distrust between immigrants and our communities and law enforcement. And even still today, people talk. And how many years ago was that? It was more than 10 years ago, but that was such a negative, powerful incident. People bring it up all the time because we remember those faces of those families, the terrified look on our neighbors and our friends. So our police department, this is important to know when you have a conversation with people and they try to explain the lie that, well, we just let criminals walk in our street and people get a free pass and something. That is not true. If you commit a crime and if you committed a violent act, a felony, as described in our local trust act, we work with law enforcement to remove that person. But we're not going to be part of any blind raids here. We're not going to be part of rousing people. Now, one of the things we have done that's been beneficial, and ICE and the other agencies, since we've taken our new approach on our stance as a sanctuary city, has been more cooperative with us. We actually assigned an officer to them, so we get an exchange of information. We understand what they're doing, and it's been informative. When they've been targeting a certain individual who's a violent person, we have that information in advance. We work with them to remove that person. We get to educate and talk to the public about why this person had to be removed or why there was a warrant, so there's not a lot of hysteria in the air, because there are always questions. I don't know how that's going to change with the new administration, and if the president-elect expects to hire all these ICE officers and what they think they're going to do. From our feedback so far, we have a great relationship with our federal agencies, and they understand what we're trying to accomplish in the community, and there's a mutual respect, and we're going to keep an eye on that. I promise you that we will take no part of breaking up families, rousing people from their homes. We're not going to do that. And I won't speak for Chief Fallon, but I'll tell you those will be his words. Those will be his words. Yes.
Can I just wanted, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but based on this discussion right now, one of the committees I happen to be assigned to is Public Health and Safety from the Board of Aldermen. We met tonight. I just came from there to get here. Who was in attendance at our meeting this evening happened to be Chief Fallon. Happened to be Chief Fallon from the police department. And he offered information to the Public Health and Public Safety Committee, which will be reported out by Alderman Conley, who chairs this committee. But what he offered to us is, and I believe it was either yesterday, but I think it was this morning, he held meeting at his office with various immigrant groups and various leaders in the city, working together to brainstorm about what they can do to make sure that they outreach to all the proper groups citywide and beyond, so that they understand there's a safety net here, that they understand, you could have been here tonight. I heard it from him this evening, and they have already had multiple meetings, the most recent of which I believe was this morning. So the mayor speaks accurately when he says that the chief of police is working very aggressively on this matter, especially in light of the recent election. I just wanted to offer that information to you all.
That's Alderman Rosetti. Thank you. I do want to talk about in terms of the recent election, and we do this obviously because we are uncertain about what the future holds, and we want to be prepared to be out in front and do everything we can to protect our families. But it's also created more distrust in our immigrant communities. Despite the good work we've done in the last several years, just the negative rhetoric and the results of this election have caused people to say, maybe I'm not coming up to this meeting tonight. Maybe I can't trust the mayor or the police chief or my elected officials. I mean, that's understandable. It's sad to think of, but, so we're gonna put in, and I think Alderman Rossetti could bring that up, that the chief is, and his team and the offices do incredible work in the city. You know, a department that stands for putting a Black Lives Matter banner on City Hall and promoting the trust fund. And stands up with their fellow law enforcement leaders around the state and country and say, this is important for all of us. And I have the greatest admiration for them, but that's why we're doing the extra work, because now we got extra work to do now, just to rebuild some of the trust we may have lost in the last few weeks. Yes? Good evening.
I'm just hearing a note of asking and expecting a lot of trust. And I think in many ways, it was a chilling moment when I heard you imagine that you would need to adopt a child, because at any point that parents are separated from their kids, that means we didn't stand up and stop it. So I don't want to make it sound as though it can happen without us all literally participating and letting it happen. So I would never ask anybody to feel, when I give them a hug, that they should feel reassured that I think they're going to be okay, because we have to prove that. And I'm not hearing anything actively telling me that we're going to prove that, like being very proactive in stopping any effort to remove somebody from their home. So I want to know my rights as a Somervillian, and I love you, Mayor Joe. I want to know my rights as a civilian to stop the police from taking someone away, and what my protections are going to be when I stop the police from taking a neighbor away. And what are our plans for making sure that we have recourse as citizens to be in the streets stopping it when our neighbors' kids are taken away?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to what I mentioned earlier, Ron Heifetz kind of challenging us to remember our leadership responsibilities and being ethical and honest when we talk to people, what we expect to happen and what we can and can't do, and preparing people for what might be unthinkable that could happen. So what can we do legally? Well, we're trying to understand all that now and be honest with residents, saying, well, yeah, you can stop or you can't stop. If ICE has a warrant, here's what can happen, can't happen, and what are the resources necessary. But, you know, Heifetz said to us, you know, well, what happens if they deport people? What are you telling them? A couple of us said, well, that ain't going to happen. Well, how are you leading if you're not being honest with those people, saying, yeah, you can be deported? And that, I think, garnered a lot of silence. And what do we tell people? I'm happy to tell this. I'll stand in front. I'll be arrested for you. I will take anybody into my home. I'm sure many people here do that also. At some point, what else are we capable of doing legally and so forth? And so I think we have to approach this somehow ethically.